I found out my husband married me for my $5 million trust fund, but that's not even the worst part. His girlfriend helped him plan the whole thing, and they were going to split my money after the divorce. My name is Victoria. I'm 30 years old, and I need to tell you about the day I discovered my entire marriage was a con. Not just an affair. A calculated, premeditated scheme to steal $5 million from someone who thought she'd finally found love. I know what you're thinking. Rich girl problems, right? But here's what I need you to understand. When someone targets you for money, they don't just steal your wealth. They steal your ability to trust that anyone could ever love you for who you are. 3 years ago, the Metropolitan Museum of Art hosted their annual charity gala. I was there representing my family's foundation, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, doing the thing wealthy people do where we congratulate ourselves for caring while writing tax-deductible checks. I wasn't looking for love. I was actually planning to leave early. Then Ryan Henderson walked up to the bar next to me and ordered a whiskey. Neat, not champagne. Something about that felt real in a room full of pretense. He was handsome in that accessible way. Brown hair, slightly messy, blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He worked in corporate consulting, he told me. Advised nonprofits on operational efficiency. He'd heard about the work my foundation did with arts education in underserved communities and wanted to know more. We talked for 2 hours, not about money or society connections. We debated whether nonprofits did more harm than good. He challenged my assumptions. He made me think. When he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like someone was interested in my mind, not my bank account. I should have known that was exactly the point. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Coffee dates that turned into 6-hour conversations. Weekend trips upstate where nobody knew my last name. He cooked at his modest Brooklyn apartment instead of taking me to expensive restaurants. He insisted on splitting checks even though it stretched his budget. Every single detail was designed to make me feel like he didn't care about my money, and I fell for it. My parents were cautious from the beginning. My father was blunt. Victoria, you've known him 8 months. That's not enough time to know someone's character. It's enough time to know I love him, I said, defensive, and he loves me for me, not for this. I gestured around their penthouse overlooking Central Park. My mother took my hand. Darling, men who don't care about money don't quit their jobs 2 months into a relationship. She was referring to Ryan's decision to leave his consulting position to support my work full-time at the foundation. At the time, I thought it was romantic. Now I know it was strategic. We got married at City Hall with just a few friends present. Ryan suggested it, said he didn't want my parents' money funding some elaborate wedding. I thought it was refreshingly humble. What it actually was calculated. Small wedding meant fewer people asking questions, but I insisted on one thing, a prenuptial agreement. Not because I didn't trust Ryan, but because my trust fund was family money, held in a structure my grandfather had created, and the trustees required it. Ryan signed without hesitation, which I took as proof of his genuine intentions. What I didn't know was that he'd already consulted with a lawyer about how to get around it. The first year of marriage was good. We lived in a comfortable apartment in the Upper West Side. I was busy with the foundation, running programs, attending board meetings. I lived off the interest from my trust fund, about $200,000 a year. The principal, $5 million, sat untouched. My grandfather had structured it so I couldn't access the principal until I was 35, unless I petitioned the trustees with a compelling reason. Ryan started suggesting we access the principal about 6 months into the marriage. We should buy a house, build equity instead of paying rent. It made sense on the surface, but something made me hesitate. The interest is more than enough for us to live on. There's no rush. His jaw tightened just for a second before he smiled. Of course. You're right. The suggestions became more frequent. A bigger apartment, a summer house in the Hamptons, a Tesla. Each request wrapped in logic, coded in concern for our future. And each time I said no, he got a little more frustrated, a little more withdrawn. He worked late more often. He was always on his phone texting but would put it away when I came near. I told myself every marriage goes through phases. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then 18 months into our marriage, my assistant Marcus came into my office with an expression I'd never seen before. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. Victoria, I need to show you something, and I'm really sorry about this. He pulled out his phone and showed me an email chain forwarded to the foundation's general account by mistake. The sender was someone named Julia Brennan. The recipient was my husband, Ryan. The subject line was timeline update. The content made my blood run cold. I know you're frustrated, but we're almost there. You said she'd access the principal by now, but these things take time. 2 more years, max, and we'll have everything we planned for. Stay focused. I love you, Jay. I read it 3 times. Who is Julia Brennan? I don't know, Marcus said quietly, but I thought you should see it. I sat very still, staring at the words. Stay focused. I love you. Timeline. Principal. Everything we planned for. Forward this to my personal email. And don't mention it to anyone. That night, I came home to find Ryan cooking dinner, humming along to music, acting like the devoted husband he'd been pretending to be. I watched him from the doorway for a moment. Hey, babe, he said with that easy smile. I'm making that pasta you love. Good, I lied, kissing his cheek like I always did. Foundation stuff. You know how it is. I didn't confront him. Because confronting someone reveals your hand, and I'd grown up watching my father negotiate business deals. You never show what you know until you know everything. The next morning, I called a private investigator my father had once used. His name was Marcus Chen. He was expensive, thorough, and discreet. I need to know everything about my husband, everything about his past, who he talks to, where he goes. And I need to know about a woman named Julia Brennan. Marcus Chen didn't ask why. He just nodded. Give me 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, came home, smiled at my husband, slept next to him, and pretended everything was normal while my insides churned. Ryan must have sensed something because he was extra attentive, more affectionate, suggesting we plan a trip to Paris for our second anniversary. Looking back, I wonder if he knew I was getting suspicious. On the 14th day, Marcus Chen called. You need to come to my office, and you might want to bring a lawyer. I sat across from Marcus Chen as he slid folder after folder across his desk. Police records, financial documents, email printouts, photographs. Julia Brennan, age 32, lives in Brooklyn. She's been in a relationship with your husband for 7 years. My stomach dropped. 7 years. That meant they were together 2 years before I even met Ryan. They never broke up, Marcus continued. She knew about you from the beginning. In fact, she helped plan the whole thing. He pulled out emails between Ryan and Julia. I started reading. Target confirmed Victoria Ashford, Trust Fund 5M, accessible at 35 or with trustee approval. Works at Family Foundation, soft-hearted, isolated from family wealth mentally. Perfect mark. The email was dated 4 months before I met Ryan at that charity gala. 4 months of research, planning, strategizing. Another email from Julia to Ryan. I found her on the nonprofit circuit. She'll be at the Met Gala next month. I've confirmed she attends alone usually. Here's everything I learned about her interests, her foundation's work, her parents' concerns. Make her feel understood. Every conversation we'd had was scripted. Julia had researched me like a dissertation and handed Ryan the cheat codes to my heart. It gets worse, Marcus said. They have a lawyer who's been working on a strategy to access your trust fund principal. He's identified several approaches, having Ryan start a business you'd fund, creating a fake medical emergency, or simply waiting until you're 35 and convincing you to divorce him with a settlement. I stared at the legal documents with my husband's name on consultation agreements dated before we were even engaged. This wasn't an affair that happened. This was a con still in progress. How much of this can be proven in court? Marcus Chen smiled. All of it. They were sloppy. I have emails, voice recordings, financial records showing Julia helped Ryan create the persona he sold you. I even have the Google Doc where Julia wrote out conversation starters for him to use on your first date. I laughed, bitter and sharp. She wrote his lines? All of them. Marcus slid over a printed document. I recognized entire conversations I treasured. Word-for-word scripts Julia had written. The whiskey at the bar, neat, not champagne, makes him seem down to earth. That wasn't Ryan's authentic choice. It was a stage direction. What do you need from me? Permission to hand this to law enforcement. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. The lawyer could face disbarment and criminal charges. I sat for a long moment, looking at the evidence of my marriage spread across his desk like an autopsy. Every moment I thought was real, dissected and revealed as performance. Do it. Give everything to the police. But first I need to call my lawyer. My family's attorney, Patricia Morgan, had handled the Ashford legal matters for 20 years. She'd warned me about Ryan before the wedding. I'd ignored her then. Now I called her. Patricia arrived within an hour, took one look at the evidence, and said, "Oh, Victoria, I'm so sorry." Then she shifted. "But we're going to destroy them." We spent the next 4 hours building the case. Patricia made calls to prosecutors, to forensic accountants who could trace every dollar Ryan had spent of my money on his relationship with Julia. The prenup protects you completely. He gets nothing in the divorce. But more importantly, we can pursue criminal charges. We can also sue Julia civilly for her role. I want them both prosecuted. One question: do you want to confront Ryan first or let the authorities handle it? Part of me wanted to see his face when he realized I knew everything, but confronting him would give him time to run, to destroy evidence. Let the authorities handle it. I don't owe him a dramatic confrontation. I owe him nothing. Good, because I've already called the DA's office. For the next 3 days, I lived in my apartment with Ryan, knowing everything, saying nothing. It was surreal watching him perform the role of loving husband while I knew the entire truth. On the third night, Ryan's phone buzzed during dinner. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "I need to take this." I watched him walk into our bedroom. Through the wall, I could hear his voice rising, urgent and stressed. He came out looking shaken. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Yeah, just work stuff. I might need to go to to Julia's project, the consulting project in Brooklyn." He'd almost said her name. The mask was slipping. "Okay, don't be out too late." He left an hour later. I waited 30 minutes, then texted Patricia. "He's probably going to meet Julia. Now might be a good time." She texted back immediately. Already in motion. The next morning, I woke up alone. Ryan hadn't come home. I got dressed, made coffee, and checked my phone. There was a text from Patricia. "It's done. Both in custody." I stood in my kitchen and felt something break open in my chest. Relief, rage, grief, all mixed together. It was over. I called my mother. "Mom, can I come over?" Her voice was gentle. "We're already waiting for you, sweetheart." My parents' penthouse had always been my safe place. I walked in, and my mother pulled me into a hug without saying a word. My father stood behind her, barely contained fury on his face. Patricia arrived with updates. Ryan Henderson and Julia Brennan were arrested last night on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted theft by deception. Ryan's lawyer, Mitchell Gaines, is also under investigation. What happens now? Now we move forward with the divorce immediately. The prenup is ironclad. Separately, the criminal case will proceed. The DA has all the evidence. They're looking at significant prison time if they don't take a plea deal. My father spoke for the first time. "I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." "Dad," I started. "No." "Victoria, they committed a crime. They targeted you, researched you, planned for months to steal from you. If we don't prosecute, they'll do it to someone else." He was right. This wasn't just about me. Over the next 2 months, the details emerged. Ryan and Julia had met 6 years earlier, both working retail jobs, both ambitious and broke. They'd watched a documentary about con artists and joked about how easy it would be. The joke became a plan. They'd researched dozens of potential marks before settling on me. Young, isolated from my family's wealth, running a foundation that proved I was idealistic and trusting. I was, in Julia's words from an email, perfect because she wants to believe in authenticity so badly she won't see the performance. Ryan had practiced for months, Julia coaching him on every detail. They'd rented an apartment together that he never told me about. The freelance consulting work was actually shifts at a coffee shop to fund their real life while he played poor but noble for me. The prosecuting attorney walked me through what would happen. They're offering a plea deal. If they plead guilty, they'll each get 2 years probation and have to pay $50,000 in restitution. If they fight it and lose at trial, they're looking at 5 years in prison. What do you think they'll do? She smiled thinly. "They'll take the deal. They always do." She was right. 3 months after their arrest, Ryan Henderson and Julia Brennan stood in a courtroom and pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge read through their scheme with undisguised contempt. Ryan didn't look at me during the hearing. Julia did, just once. I stared back until she looked away. The judge sentenced them each to 3 years probation, $100,000 in restitution, and ordered them to stay away from me permanently. Mitchell Gaines was disbarred. When it was over, I walked out of that courthouse with my parents on either side of me. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt empty. The divorce was finalized within weeks. Ryan got nothing. The public records would show an annulment on grounds of fraud. In the eyes of the law, our marriage had never existed, but I knew it had existed. Not the marriage I thought I had, but the performance I'd lived through. The trust fund was restructured with additional protections. They called it the Ryan Henderson Clause. I went to therapy. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, asked me in our first session, "What's the hardest part of all this?" I thought about it. That I still don't know what was real. Were there any moments where he actually saw me as a person instead of a target? Does it matter? Dr. Chen asked gently, "Yes, because if none of it was real, then who was I during those 18 months?" We worked on that question for months. Slowly, I started to separate who I actually was from who Ryan and Julia had targeted. The trust they'd exploited wasn't weakness. The idealism they'd manipulated wasn't stupidity. A year after the arrests, I was having coffee with my mother when she said something that shifted everything. "You caught them. You didn't stay in denial. You didn't make excuses. The moment you had evidence, you investigated. The moment you had proof, you acted." That's not the behavior of someone who is conned. That's the behavior of someone smart enough to recognize a con when she sees it. I'd been so focused on the fact that I'd fallen for the scheme, I hadn't given myself credit for being the one to uncover it. "They targeted you because they thought you were vulnerable," my mother continued. "They were wrong. You were kind. There's a difference." 2 years after the divorce, I started dating again, carefully, cautiously, with a therapist on speed dial and an ironclad prenup drafted before first dates. I met James Riley at a community center in Queens where the foundation was funding an after-school program. He was a public school teacher, wore the same jacket every day because he only had two, drove a car held together by hope, and when I told him my last name and he connected it to the Ashford Foundation, he literally said, "Oh shit, you're rich. That's going to be weird." His honesty was startling. I'd been on dates with men who'd pretended not to know who I was, pretended not to care about the money, performed humility so hard it was obvious. James just acknowledged it right away, awkwardly and directly. We dated for 3 years before I let myself believe it might be real. 3 years of him insisting on paying for dates even though it strained his teacher salary. 3 years of him enduring my father's interrogations with good humor. When he proposed, he did it at that same community center in Queens, in front of the kids we both cared about. No expensive ring, just his grandmother's simple gold band. "I know you have to protect yourself. I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. I just want to be with you." We got married at City Hall, just like my first wedding. This time, my parents were there, and Patricia Morgan witnessed the prenup signing right before the vows, and I cried not from joy pretending to be love, but from actual joy. Ryan and Julia finished their probation 2 years ago. I don't know where they are now, and I don't care. They got a criminal record and a reputation that follows them. I got my life back. The $5 million trust fund sits untouched. I still live off the interest. James and I live comfortably in a modest apartment. We both still work, and we're happy in a way that Ryan and Julia's script never could have created. Sometimes I wonder if they think about me, if they regret getting caught, or if they regret the plan itself. Then I remember that I don't owe them any more of my thoughts. They took 18 months of my life. They don't get any more. Quick question. Where are you watching this from? Comment your location below. Here's what I really want to know. Have you ever been targeted for what you have instead of who you are? Whether it's money, connections, a home, a job someone pretended to love you, but really just wanted access to something you owned? I was rich, so they saw me as a target. But this happens at every income level. Someone pretends to care, but really just wants what you can provide. If you've been used for your resources, or you know someone who has, share your story below. You deserved someone who loved you, not your bank account. Hit like if you think they both deserve jail time, and subscribe for more stories where schemers get caught. Comment if you think prenups are always smart, or if you think wealthy people are always targets. Let's discuss.